So on here it says to start with extremities, and that's really true for larger pieces. For this, we don't really have a lot of extremities. Know your armature. That's vital for pieces that are a little bit bigger, especially for life-size pieces. If you have a whole armature inside, I always take a picture of the armature before I put clay on it, so that I remember what it looks like and where things are, so that I could make my cuts appropriately. Don't cut sensitive or highly detailed areas. So like, you wouldn't want to take a beautifully rendered face that you just finished and then cut it in the middle, right? That doesn't make sense. And so what you'd want to do instead is to cut around like the edge of the forehead area to the back, so then you could do the skull cap and do the face, and then you could put that back together. Does that make sense? So you don't want to cut through like sensitive things or things that you spent a long time detailing out. You cut a different way. You also try to always maintain the integrity of the form, and that's super, super important. I cannot emphasize that enough. So a lot of people get this feeling like, I'm just gonna cut it down the center like this, right? And I'll just, this part, it's 2 parts, so easy. And then they hollow it out and hollow it out and put it back together. Now the problem with that is that, let's say this is my form total, right? If I cut it this way, and I take these 2 pieces apart, and I hollow out this inside part, now my form is like this. It's so easy to just squish it or change it. It doesn't have very much integrity and structure to that form. And so instead of cutting like this, I always cut like this. So if it's circular, which a lot of body things are circular, or ovals, or they're like, the form itself lends to cutting it like this. So in an arm, I would never cut like this. I would always cut like this. Does that make sense? Okay. It's way stronger. If you have to cut like this, then you can actually cut it. Like, sometimes you have to. There's an armature there. There's no way to get the armature out except for cutting along the armature. It just happens sometimes. But you can actually pull that apart, take it off the armature, and put it back together. So it fits back together, score it back together, put it all back together, make it good, and then hollow the piece solid again. Like when it's back to solid. It's just so much better, structurally so much better. Okay, so first thing you do is you make your first cut. You decide where to cut first. So on a piece like this, my question is, what needs to be hollowed? What do y'all think? The torso. Anything else? The head. What a bummer. Why did I even add a head? Just take it off. No. Yeah, I have to hollow the head because it's more than what I would consider okay to fire. Why don't we want to fire thick clay? Both of these things. What did you say? Water and explodes. Right. Why does it explode? Air. Kind of. The water turns into water vapor inside of the clay, and then it needs to go somewhere. The same is true of like a cavity inside here. So let's say there's a pocket of air, like I'm going to hollow out. I need to have a hole into the form to release that steam. Otherwise, kaboom. So even hollowing doesn't make sure it's not going to kaboom. You have to have the hole. But if it's solid, there's almost no way you can get all of the water has to escape from the clay somehow, and it will find a way. Okay? All right. It will find a way. Clay finds a way. Every day. Oh, sorry. Okay. All right. So where should I cut it? What should I do? What?
This is what you were about to do.
Yeah.
Are you going to cut the torso in half or into thirds?
Well, it's a good question. I feel like I can get my tool up in here if I cut here. Yeah. The thing that I would like to not see is you hollowing from the bottom. Yeah. I don't want to see that. And the reason why is because if you think about the integrity of the form, it will have more integrity if it has a bottom. And you want your piece to be finished looking. Like, you want, if somebody were to look at it, purchase it, or, this is thinking future, right? Like somebody maybe wants to, or maybe current, maybe somebody wants to buy this piece when you're done. And they turn it over and it's like a mess inside, right? That's just not nice. And actually it's not gonna be a mess inside anyway, because it's gonna be beautiful inside. But anyways, it's just still better to leave the piece, give the integrity of the piece, let the piece have its integrity, okay? All right, so I am gonna cut here. Where else do I need to cut? So if I cut the neck, what does that give me? What access does that give me? So I'm actually gonna cut it up here, and I'm gonna leave this part of the head attached to the body. Then I can hollow up into the neck and down from the neck into the body to create the hole that goes all the way through the neck into the head. Yeah? And then the head will also be hollow. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm gonna do that cut second, just cause. Okay, so to do my first cut, I've decided where I'm doing it, so I wanna make some registration marks. You could kind of do this before or after you cut, but it's super important to do it, to remember to do the registration marks, even on a piece as big as what you're making, the 16-inch piece, because, for example, in a larger piece, a lot of times, and people who have done this before, where are you? There's some people in here who have made sculptures, and, oh, there you are. When you cut a larger piece, sometimes you don't actually know what it is or how it fits. You're nodding because it happened. Yeah, it happened to you. And so it's just important to do the registration marks. It's important to, I'll show you another trick too. What? Yeah, it'll fit eventually, but yeah, don't panic. Right. We don't need any panic. Okay. What? Not any extra panic. Let's not panic about ceramics. Let's not. Let's just not. Can we just hold that? It's like we don't have to panic about ceramics. Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm just gonna decide, and I'm gonna make some registration marks. Now, I'm gonna make more than one. I'm gonna make at least 3 keys, like 3 registration spots. You can almost always line up 2 registration spots, and it often will line up either direction, just because we make them opposite each other or something like that. So I always make 3, at least 3, and on a bigger piece, more. And that way you really get a really good registration. Okay, and then what you want to do is wrap the wire around and cross it. This is also very important. So instead of just like taking the wire, yeah, instead of just going like, zip, and cutting it through, that actually ends up usually distorting the other side, and distorting this side sometimes, especially if the piece is pretty firm, hard. So you wrap it around, and then you pull. You hold one still, so I'm going to hold this one still, and you pull the other one along the seam, along the other wire. Do you see how I'm pulling it along that wire? And then eventually you can pull the other one too. And voila. Right. And then I always just go back and double check, make sure that my cuts still, that my registration marks actually pass through the surface of the cut, which they don't always. Like this one, you see that? How the registration marks end there and there's no registration marks up there? So I'm just gonna line it back up the way it goes and continue those lines up there so that I'm for sure got it. Okay, it looks pretty good. Okay, the next step, another vital one, is to draw a line. Draw a line representing the thickness that you want. The thickness that you want is 3/8 of an inch. Okay. You really want to do this because sometimes we get it in our head that it needs to be thin, and thin is not better. And also, we also get it in our head that it needs to be thicker, and that's not better. And we also don't remember how this attaches, or what even part needs to be. Look at this. What even is this? Where does it attach? I don't even know, right? A lot of times that will happen. Once you cut it off, it like loses its context. You have no idea what it is. And so if you do this one step, it tells you what to cut. It tells you where to cut, how thick to cut. It's very useful. Okay, then you need a trimming tool. I like to use this trimming tool. I like the round side and not the straight side. This is the straight side, the straight edge side. That's the round side. Anybody have an idea about why that might be true? Why it might be better to use the round side?
I feel like the corners would be harder to do a different way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. When you're digging with this tool, it tends to dig in the corners, and you go deeper because of that, and you don't know where they are much more often. This only has one place that it digs, and that's the center. So you have much more control over where that's happening. So I always hold the thing in my hand, or if I can't hold it in my hand, and oftentimes I'll be seated. I just want to show you what it looks like when I'm at home. Can I use a stool really quick?
Oh yeah.
So when I'm at home, I've got a stool or a little a chair I sit in. This is actually perfect because my feet, it's a little low and my feet can be all the way flat, which is really nice. And I'll have a bucket right here, a big bucket. And then I'll have my apron handy. And then I'll just sit with my hand relaxed on my thigh so that I could really feel all the parts. And then I'll start to hollow. Now some of the pieces might be too big, but mostly not because we do cut them pretty small. So I'm gonna go ahead and move back up there so y'all can see. But then once I was done, I have a whole lap full of stuff, I'll just take this and shake it into the bucket. It works really well. Okay, so I'm gonna use this tool. Even on a bigger piece, I would never use this tool. Laughing again. Almost everybody tries this tool. A lot of people try it on bigger sculptures because they think it's faster, but it's actually, you go through a lot with that tool. It's not worth it. It's not faster by any stretch of the imagination. Often slower, way slower. Yeah. You just go through so often. All right, do you see how much I'm taking out? Like this much. So I'm not taking out a ton. And that's because this is a tiny little thing. So I want to take out some. I've got my line to go to, so that's nice, 3/8 of an inch. I like to take out some and then feel, starting at the top, because I know that's actually the thickness that I want. Yeah. And then I feel down. So I feel like, oh, okay, is it thicker or thinner? I need to take out a little bit right there. Now what's going on right here? Well, there's kind of a big knob right there that I need to hollow out, so I better go down a little bit more in that area. We want the inside to match the outside as much as possible, which is pretty possible in almost all cases. And we want 3/8 of an inch everywhere. And there's something that happens when it's even. You can feel, it is, an acquired feel, but you can actually feel the weight of it and know that it's even everywhere. It's an interesting thing. Once you kind of learn that, what it feels like, you can recognize it just holding whatever object. It's kind of interesting. It's like you can feel the weight distribution. It's really what it is. So thinner, people often go thinner, like they go a 1/4 inch. It's just not good. A 1/4 inch is too thin, and it often fails in the kiln. And people go through, and they get even thinner in some spots because it's not going to be perfect. So they get, an occasional 3/8 of an inch, which is a little bit more, and then they get an occasional like 1/8 of an inch, and then it's like there's nothing there to hold anything. So I've found 3/8 of an inch is the kind of perfect thickness from this size to life size. So all those sculptures that are life size that you saw that I made, they're all 3/8 of an inch. The whole thing, everywhere. That's why I can lift them.
What tool do you use to haul those giant ones out?
Actually, I have a specialized tool, but it's only a tiny, tiny bit bigger. And what it is it doesn't come down in the side. It's just a teeny bit bigger, and then it's just round, like straight. Yeah, it's just the only reason I have it is because these break like crazy. Yours will probably break. I'm really sorry. If it does, I have another one, or you could glue it back. These are cheap, they're cheap tools. So the one I have is more expensive, and they last for 10 years. But then when they're done, like the reason my first one is done is because I actually wore through the blade. That's how much I used it before it died. Not because it came off the end, it didn't break. It just, the clay wore it out. Because clay has a lot of stuff in it. One of the things it has in it is grog, and my clay especially. I have groggy clay, and the grog is fired clay that then has been ground up and put back into the body and it makes the body more easily sculpted because it allows more air and space between the particles. So that's why you would want to use a groggy clay for sculpture. Not so great for throwing though. Hurts your hands.
I was just supposed to ask, is the white clay groggy that we have?
All of the clay we have is groggy. Yeah, there are some. Yeah, so we have a BC6 now.
There's a couple of them.
And
Just
what
like
does that
4 or
mean?
5 boxes.
Oh, okay.
What does BC6 mean?
It's just a different clay,
Oh, okay.
and the recipe doesn't have grog, or maybe has a finer mesh of grog, whatever it is.
Okay.
It's just less abrasive on your hands when you throw.
So good for throwing. maybe,
Throwing.
or- oh.
How much is it?
$8.50.
$8.50. Same as the
Seems like, wow.
same as the other stuff, the non-recycled clay. Okay, I want you to notice how long this is taking me. And I have a lot of experience, like a lot. I've done this a lot of times. And I'm not being slow because I'm demoing. This is the speed. And notice again how often I'm checking and so this is like this little nub. I need to get into that nub, but I don't want to go through if I can help it. And there's like a little indent there, so I have to be kind of careful in that spot. Okay, that feels pretty good. Should I pass this around so you can feel it?
Yeah.
Okay.
What happens